You heard the song. This land is my land, this land is your land. I have a border to the New York Highlands, from the redwood forest to the stream water. This land was made for you and me. Oh no. Take that. This land is your land. This land is my land. And in the end, this land was made for you and me. Do you see the corruption? Do you see the propaganda in that song? That song was created to ease our minds, to ease our consciousness about these aliens taking our land from us. And it worked. This simple song, this land is your land, this land is my land, and they taught it to all the children. Every time there was a major event on television or something like that, there they were singing that song. So the whole generation of children knew that song. See how everybody in here knew that song? No. 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 This is unacceptable. This is a lie. This land is my land. Our land. But when we thought we were from Africa, this song gave us a warm and cozy feeling. Oh, this land is my land too. Okay, because I'm from Africa. I came from Africa as a slave. Normally I would be disenfranchised out of the land. And now, now I can get a little peace because of this song. It makes me feel good. But now that we know who we are, we say, oh no. This land is nobody's land but ours. So I have to take them to a court case. And Joyce is not here, and I hope she doesn't mind my discussing this case. And the reason is because there would come a point in time where those of you who would be present would be asked to sign a document on her behalf. And I was working on this case for Joyce. And the case involves land that is in air property, over 300 acres of it in Virginia. And what happened in this particular case is that Jerry Falwell, and I don't know how many of you have ever heard of Jerry Falwell, the Christian writer, they wanted to build a resort on this land, and they had been after it for years. Even when, I understand, they had been after it, even long before Joyce was born, they were after this tract of property. And what happened was, over the years, the grandmother who owned the land passed away without a will. And therefore, the land belonged to all her heirs in common. All of her children, then as her children began to pass away, all of the grandchildren. So now there's a whole slew of people in the family who own this land in common. But nobody wanted to go back to Virginia to deal with the land. Nobody wanted to farm it. Nobody wanted to go down there and live on it. Because it's out in, it's in Pennsylvania County, Virginia. So that gives you some ideas to, how out in the boonies it is. Something very important is going on out here. So, the land had previously been used as tobacco farming. So tobacco had been raised on the land. The land was also used for timber and used as a replenishing for Christmas trees and things like that. So now she had a great aunt who's nearly 90 years old and decided to sue the family. And she did, at the behest of some Albion attorneys who represented, of course, the interests of Jerry Falwell and his They convinced the aunt to sue the family, and the family thinking the aunt is crazy. A lot of them didn't get served because they didn't have the correct location to even mail them the lawsuit. So obviously, over time, and probably a period of years, the aunt wins by default. So now she owns all 300 acres. Now what does she do? She decides, well, she is going to, at the request of this attorney, have it put up for auction. And so the county assists her and has a survey done of the property, and they subdivide and they put a lot of energy into it. They hire engineers, geologists, environmentalists, and all these reports are generated out of this land to see all the usefulness of it. And all the reports come back good. No environmental concern, right? The soil is still good because even though it used to be used years ago for tobacco, nobody's been planting anything on it for the past 10 or 15 years. So the soil is virgin soil. 2 highways have since been built nearby. There's a river, and basically untapped river that runs right through the middle.
We're not scriptural, however.
There are gas lines that run through it, telephone lines that run through it. It's ideal for development. So now they put it up for auction, and they put it out for bid. And most of the families don't even know that this is happening. So Joyce comes to me 3 days before the auction. Right? So I just want to say that because give you some ideas. A lot of times when things come up, it's a crisis situation. So I have to drop what I'm doing in Charles A's Witnesses is all the time to solve a problem. And I have to solve it within 3 days. Now, we solved it. We solved it, and I'll tell you how in a little bit. But we solved it, and we stopped the whole thing dead in its tracks. Needless to say, all the county officials, everybody's angry with this. But at least most of the family is behind her, and she'll need them. So, but the family that she's really going to need to back her is this one, because all of her family members, of course, are state boards. This brings, and so what happened was I sent Joyce, I said, Joyce, look, you know, I don't have time to do all this running around and all this stuff like that for you. I did my part. You have to do the rest, because after all, I got all this other stuff in Charles A. Everybody's banging at my door. Do this for me, do this. So all this little stuff, I had to give her a list. Here, you do this, you do that. Send her hither and yonder, taking care of all these activities. And she did everything I told her to do. And I was really pleased with that, because sometimes when you're doing something for the very first time and activating your status and law, you get confused. And then people try to take you off the square. She was supposed to get the document recorded in Pennsylvania County, and the clerk gives her a call and says, we won't record this document. Well, why? I said, well, oh, we have to check with the commissioner, blah, blah, blah. This is back in the day. Oh, we don't normally take documents like this. Well, why? So Joyce came back to me, and she was just very drained, because she allowed this Albion woman to take her off her square. I had already told her that they're going to try to trick, I said, they're going to try to trick you and have you believe, oh, this doesn't mean anything. Oh, what's going on here? You're like, you're crazy and you don't know what you're doing. But they know what you're doing. And if they can convince you to not move forward, then they've won. I said, Joyce, if you don't get that document recorded, this land is history. So then she calls back and she's angry because I've yelled at her. And I've yelled at her pretty good, too. Because I was angry. I had taken 3 days out of doing some other very important things for myself to solve her problem, and now I'm pissed. Okay? Said, look, if nothing else, I spent 3 days putting this document together. You're going to get that document recorded, and you better not. So I was really fussing at her pretty bad. She got a little tear in her eye. I said, don't cry. You better not cry. You get your behind there, come and you tell that lady. So the lady says, oh, well, it's going to cost you $100 and something. Right? So now here she is again. Now she says, Now, we have to take it, we know that, but it's going to cost you $100. Like, that would discourage her. Right? So she calls me back. Oh, she wants me to send $100. I said, well, do you have it? Well, yes. I said, but it shouldn't cost $100 to get the document recorded. I said, have the lady send you a list, a real list. The document's already there. They had already stamped it. There's no question about it. They have to stamp it once they receive it, especially the way we sent it. They have to stamp it. So, come to find out it only costs $8. But you see, what's really important is that the lady's trying to tell her anything on the phone. It's like, you're from out of town. I know you're not going to come down here and really see about this thing. And we got this thing locked up. They've been planning it for a long time. The engineering study was a year old. The civil engineering study where they had laid out how they were even going to grade the property. They had it, it was locked up. So now, she sends the document out to everybody, to the realtor, to the title company, to the people who are on the list to attend the auction. She sends it to and then the attorney got on the phone and called and said, well, you're sending the document to everybody in the world. Right? So they had to shut everything down. Now, the point is this. Had Joyce not been a Moor, she would not have been able to stop these people from taking her family's land. This land is in Virginia. And just so happened, I was in Virginia over the holidays. And when did we do that for Joyce Charles? About a month ago? Right before Thanksgiving, wasn't it?
I think it was like the beginning of December.
Seems like it was around Thanksgiving.
So it'd be like a week before the month, beginning of December.
Yeah, it was around Thanksgiving. So now, I'll tell you, this is just phenomenal. Not only were the articles in the Tribune, I didn't get the Tribune yet, but the articles came out in Philadelphia where Joyce is, where we are. Because a lot of these things that were emanating were coming from Philadelphia, because she said, well, what should I do? I said, record it in Philadelphia too. So it's recorded in Philadelphia, just in case they try to play games down here, okay? Because when you record, you can record in any county in the world. Now, in Virginia, this is my hometown where this newspaper came out of, right? They got not just one day, they got a 3-day series of articles on the very issue I just solved for Joyce. And they titled it Unfair Law of the Land, and it's called partitioning. How when there are multiple family members who own air property in common, that if one heir sells their interest in the land, then whoever they sell it to can force an auction of the whole thing. It's called partitioning. This is how they took most of our land. And then they try to say, well, the reason that this happens is because the people died and didn't leave a will. They go on, I'll pass it around. They go on to say that 80% of the people, of most of the people who are affected by this, 80% of them are African Americans. It's the same article. Yeah. Now, do you see the danger? Do you see the danger? Now, here's what's important. These articles came out because of what we did. Now, what's very interesting in these articles is that, I don't know what this one is right here. This one is another, which Aya tore apart. This is part of it here. The rest of the series, it's all different, where in the end, the bottom line to the story is, this land was unfairly taken, but the law was used. This is what they're saying in these articles. Yes, it may be unfair, but it's the law. So everything that they did was lawful and above board. Therefore, the people who, all these families who they're talking about who lost this land, it's just too bad. Because they weren't taking care of their family business. Now, they're SOL, right? Now, then they go on to put a whole bunch of internet sites, list them in the article on the next page, that blacks and African Americans can go to search for information, genealogy information, county records information, and blah, 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 deed transfers, and so forth and so on. Now, land back?
No.
The chances are not just nil, it's zero. Absolutely no chance at all to get their land back. So why are they running the story? To make the people upset? You know, the people are already upset. They know they lost the land. Now they got some of them, a lady in there with a red dress on. Like she's representing of being a Moor in her Moorish consciousness and the family's land. They're smiling. And they lost 300 and some acres of their family land. Was taken through this process called partition. And they're sitting in there smiling and saying, well, you know, the attitude is, well, you know, I feel bad about it, but there's nothing I can do about it. Then they have a Negro that says, oh, well, this happened to our family back in the 50s, and you shouldn't speak up and say anything lest you be hanged. So, wait a minute. This is 2001, so what about now? You're just supposed to just never go back and challenge these issues and these things? Even if you don't stand a snowball chance in hell of winning, just the thought that we're going to try to get the land, we're going to keep trying something until eventually something's going to happen. They go on and talk about how there's a county courthouse on one family's land, the man sitting there on a park bench across the street from the courthouse, you know, looking at the courthouse, and that's his family's land that they took and put the county courthouse on. And he's sitting there looking at it. Another one, they got a professional baseball training facility, and said, you look at the photograph, all Albion sitting in the bleachers on land that was taken from this family. Deeds were death sentences. Now they're trying to scare the hell out of you and say, oh, if you challenge it, then somebody's liable to kill you. So they go about taking the land, and then if you stand up to them, then they do something, you know, physically abuse you or something. So don't dare try, but you can do some research and at least find out what your family did on them. But what does that do? No. It doesn't get you the land back. It just causes you to waste money. And the thing is, they're going to have a lot of black people out there on those websites after those articles trying to do something that's impossible. My point is, those articles came out because of what I did for Joyce. Because what I did for Joyce is a big, big deal. Because it's the only way to stop those people. It's the only way to stop it. Okay? Are there any comments?
This is interesting. I mean, this article opens, it says lawyers and real estate traders are stripping Americans, well, that's what of their ancestral land today, simply by following the law.
Right, but listen to what they're saying. First of all, they're not Americans, you know that. Second of all, they do say ancestral land.
Yeah, right.
Huh? Right. They're talking about us. Ancestral land. Right? When you say ancestral land, you're talking about something that's ancient, that's old. You're not talking about just your grandmother passed away, even though that's your ancestor. You don't only think of your grandmother as your ancestor. You think your ancestors are a few generations behind. Okay? So when you say ancestral land, you're talking about land that's been in the family for thousands of years even.
That's even before slavery.
Long, right. Long before slavery. I'll give him dinner.
Wasn't the guy with the courthouse built on his family's land? The land was in the family since like
1873.
1873.
Okay.
Right.
But there were slaves during that time.
It was before that. I'm sure that man's family owned land before. It was 1873 when they probably got the first deed on the property. And tricked them by putting the deeds up there. And the people don't know that before they had a deed, they owned the land outright without any encumbrances on the land. Now, as soon as they trick them and say, here, you need to sign a deed and protect your property and come on and join us and let us help you protect your property. And they sign that deed and get it recorded with the county, and from then on, they have to pay taxes. And if they don't pay the taxes, they come and they seize the property at a tax sale. Now this situation of what they call partitioning,
So you actually never own anything, as a state board or corporate, you never own.
you
can take
cannot, it is not possible.
Right.
It is not possible for you to own anything as a state board. It's not, it's just not, it doesn't exist. And now, right, and you don't even own an automobile. Your children don't even, you guardian of your children because they belong to the state. I'm sorry, I promised Robbie I was gonna get her, then I'll come back to you.
I was just from what I read, it basically that has a lot to do with what happened with the Moors with their land. That what they're detailing?
Yes, but they're explaining it from a black perspective, as if it's black people or African American.
So what is the intent, how they gonna, if they were slaves, how did these people get off this land?
Exactly, and that's why they're trying to qualify it as in 1873. You understand what I'm saying? Post-Civil War. As if to say that this land was left to him after he became free. Or maybe his master gave it to him as a settlement or something like that.
And that's what they reneged on, the 40 acres of the land.
Well, yeah. I ain't doing that.
Well, they took the 40 acres.
Right, that's right.
Don't
This
give
is
me
where
my,
it is.
don't tell me give me 40 acres when I own 300.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And no Albion, right, is indigenous to nowhere in the world.
That's right.
He's not original. So everything he owns here has to be stolen.
That's right. There's a
Has to
perception
be.
of ownership. Because ownership for them doesn't exist.
So when they go back and start looking at, well, they state boards, but if they go back and see where the land where it first started being partitioned off or whatever, they can't go back in and say because they didn't know anything about the land being sold or that they were heirs to it, they have no fight.
They have no recourse because what they're asking, they would have to sue in court. And what they would ask, in order to get the decision reversed, they would have to prove that there was an error or some kind of way. And there is no way that an Albion judge sitting in an Albion-controlled court is going to reverse a decision like that. First of all, when the challenges did come, because there were some of them that did have challenges and came before the courts to challenge, the courts ruled against them anyway, ruled in favor of the partition sale anyway, okay? Because some of them were saying they didn't get served.
Right.
Exactly. Now, any judge that has a group of people come forward and say, we were never served, should never give a court order granting the partition sale.
Right.
But they were doing it anyway. So it didn't matter that the people came in. And then it talks about how their own attorneys did not operate in their own best interest. Well, of course not. Okay, that goes without saying that the attorneys weren't going to work in their best interest. Right?
He's an officer of the court.
Right, they're officers of the court.
But they come in pro se anyway, right?
That's correct, that's why. But it's not just because they're pro se, it's because they're going into that jurisdiction. Period.
But what's interesting is this guy out in March. I mean, his statement here, a man who doesn't have land has no freedom at all.
Yes.
That he comes to this conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, there's this one person here, they want to say accumulated 500-something acres after the Civil War.
After the Civil War. Right. You see
In
how
Louisiana.
ridiculous, right, Louisiana. See how ridiculous that is?
And they're talking about oil rigs are now.
Oil rigs down the street from his family. Now see, this is one of the reasons that all of that happened is because when certain mineral rights came in, because they said that when the land was partitioned, they were awarded mineral rights, riparian rights, which gives them the right to the waterways, the fish, and all that kind of stuff like that there. They got all the rights that come with land ownership. The ones who were awarded the partition and bought the properties at auction were awarded all of those rights, almost as if they owned the land allodially. Okay? So now, the other thing that you need to know is that at these partition sales, of course, they they have it all hooked up so all their buddies are in there bidding. You know that. And they end up bidding, and they don't bid very much money. Because this one property, I think was 300 and some or 200 and some acres. It might have been that 500 some acres. What did they give the guy? A used truck? They gave him a used truck, $1,000 for what? 500 and some acres of land. Okay? So now, in the other partition sale, and what they tried to do with Joyce's family, 300 and some acres of land sold for $240,000, which is less than $1,000 an acre. It was worth more than $1,000 an acre if it had an environmental problem on it. Yes.
It says, like, at the January 21st, 1956 auction, wholesale bought the 80 acres for $6,400. He quickly sold the land and the oil and gas rights.
Oil and gas.
Unspecified amounts, record show. But the land changed hands several times before being acquired in 1996. This thing it says about truck. Oh yeah. The deed filed in Post 30 Linden was paid $100 cash and other considerations, a used truck, and $100.
How many acres was that one?
This is part of this whole 560 acres.
Right, but the guy, the Albion, ended up having the whole thing, even though he started off petitioning for 80 acres. He ended up with the whole thing. Yes,
There's
Charlie?
11 acres.
No, start off with
With 11, right, he started off with 11 acres.
Right.
Well, the guy owned 80 or 160 or something, and the Marsh guy who owned that part gave this man a deed for 11 acres out of his 80. And because he had deed interest in 11 acres, he was able to sue the rest of the family, go to court, and enforce a partition sale on the whole 500 and some acres.
That's something that was on paper that I was reading you, the listing handed me. It says like buying a share in Coca-Cola.
Right.
And making everybody else have to sell their shares.
Right. Now you buy a share of Coca-Cola, then you force a sale of the whole company. That's exactly right. That would never happen. Now, what is lawful about that? Then they got law of the land. Yes, Jamal?
Plus, half those people were squatters, and they took over the right of the lawful landowners.
Right.
That from what my brother just saying.
No, I said the Albions were squatters.
Squatters.
Oh, right.
Squatters.
Yeah,
That's all they were doing was squatting. They took over the lawful land of somebody else.
Right. Now you see, the reason that whole thing could come about was because they had deeds. If they did not have deeds, this whole idea of a partition sale could not exist. Could not exist. But our ancestors got away from using titles. They got away from knowing. And here's the very sad part. There was a time when there was no such thing as a deed. There were only titles. That's all they had was titles. Now all of a sudden there's this new fancy document called a deed, and they come out to the rural areas. They came everywhere, but out into the rural areas, if you watch the westerns, you'll see this happen often. They call them the corrupt bankers, come out there and tell somebody, just put your X right there on the deed, and next thing you know, boom, they're in the tax system, and they are a part of all this that comes with it, because if you have a deed, you have to pay the school assessment tax. If you have a deed, you have to pay the property tax. If you have a deed, you have to pay the water and the sewer tax. You agree to that, but that's never on the deed in that language. How is it on the deed? How do you know on your deed that you have to pay taxes? That you've agreed to pay taxes?
Gotta be an adhesion contract.
It's an adhesion contract, that's true, but there's some language on every deed that people don't know. They see it, but they don't understand the implication of it, and they sign off on it. It's how they reference the property. What do they call the property? They'll say lot and block number. That is solid. That has to be on every deed document, because that's solid. Lot and block number. Always remember that. on and say, lot number, block number, right? Then they go on and say, 520 Market Street. Not quite. 520 Market Street, but that's corporate. Then they go on to say, tax map number. And there you go. Once they've assigned it a tax map number, you're history. Because they're maps. It doesn't have to be a tax map. What? Huh? With NetMap, that's right. NetMap. And that's how we're going to win that case. Because we're going to win that case. We're getting our money. We're going to have that building. Because on the tax map, it says that they are tax exempt. It says that the property is tax exempt, and yet they're paying taxes to the city.
Who's collecting, the city?
Well, we don't know who's actually collecting and what's happening with the money. But on the tax map, the whole lot is on there as tax exempt. Nobody should, they're laundering money. And they're going to jail. Because we're going to bring the whole story out. And they're going to pay us. They're going to pay us. Now, did you ever think that that's what lured you in? That's what got you? That thing right there causes a whole lot of things to happen to you.
What happens when you see that tax map number and it's nothing there?
If it has a tax map number and there's nothing there, what they've done is they've moved it. And they'll put it lot and block number, and they'll assign it like a fancy registration number. They'll say tax map number, and it might be blank, but somewhere else on the document they'll have registration number. Philadelphia does that. Philadelphia does that. And then what happens in their deeds office, where they have all the tax maps, in Philadelphia they have the tax maps, they're huge. And they have them encased in plastic, but you can go in here. And they have every property in the city of Philadelphia, it's on the tax map. And on the tax map, it has a reference number that you've never seen. You're buying a house unless you happen to know to go into the deeds office and look it up on the tax map and see where you are. And that number that's on the tax map is part of the registration number. It's like the tax map number might be 14G. Like on map number 14, spot G, something like that. It might be 14G7, something like that, okay? But the registration number might be 140-14-G-7-102. A registration number. You see what I'm saying? Now, in that registration number is that. So they know, because they're working there, that this part represents the tax map, where they can go and find it on the tax map. They're slick. And this, because of this, you pay taxes. And you won't find a deed that doesn't have one.
So what happens is people, if they have title and they end up being used and then having deed applied to this land, and they're used to living off the land and being self-sufficient, and once they have to come up with cash dollars, that's how they lose the land. Because they
Yes.
can't pay into their system.
Yes, not just because they can't. A lot of them don't understand why all of a sudden they're getting a bill, and they don't pay it.
This is my land, you can't make it big.
And you can't make, and they take that position. My ancestors, if we lived here all our lives, my mother, my grandfather, all that. And so they take a position, right? The second thing that happens, even if they take a position, say they go to court, like my great-grandfather did, went to court and defended it. And he won the first go-round, okay? Because he had his paperwork in order. I don't know how much he understood about the law. But he won the first go-round. But they kept after the property, and they kept after him and after him. So by the time he became elderly, they really started bombarding him and constantly having the sheriffs come out and serve him papers. And they had guns and different things like that. And they would come out in the middle of the night to serve papers and all that kind of nonsense. And he lived alone, and they scared him. Okay? So, this is what they're saying, that B could be a death sentence, and they scared him to the point that by the time he was going to court and he was elderly and everything, they took advantage of him. Okay? So now, all of them are in cahoots. That's the other thing that you have to understand. The sheriffs, the judges, the people who are after the property, the tax collectors and all that, they're all in a grand conspiracy to take this land. Okay? Exactly, everybody gets paid. Right. And remember in the class Slavery, the Truth, where we talked about how they would take the land this way. Then what they used to do, they used to have what was called debtor's prison or tax jail. So they would take, like my great-grandfather, he didn't pay the tax, they came on the property and took him to jail. Because they couldn't get the property. Okay? They took him to jail. Now, what happened was this. He didn't have a deed. They took him to jail in another county, put him in shackles and all that. And he told the story that where they took him to work on a farm, which we would term a plantation, where Albions lived in the big house. This is slavery. This is why a lot of our people believe that their grandparents and great-grandparents were slaves. What happened to him after the time period was up, and I don't know how long that was, and they let him out, and he went back to his own land. There was an Albion family living in his house, on his land. They were living in his house. Now, he didn't even know how to get there. He didn't know. Here's what happened. This is how they revolved the people. So after they took my grandfather off his land, they put an Albion family in the house. Then they would take somebody else from another county or another area and put them in tax jail and send them to his property, where there's an Albion family in the house, and there they were working the land. And the perception of that one is they see the Albion family in the house, they think the Albion family owns the land, but they didn't. So anyway, he had to go to court to have his Albion family removed from his house, and it took some time. I don't know how long. But after the Albion family moved out of the house, he moved back in and continued to receive these tax bills and still refused to pay. Well, otherwise, he didn't pay. So the next time they came and got him in shackles again, the same thing took him off the land, and he passed away after they took him. So he never returned back to his home. So by the time his children get involved and come and say, well, one of them starts living in the house, they're presented with a deed document to sign to protect the property. And they didn't know any better. So of course, by them having a deed document, the tax assessment was too high for any of them to pay. And they lost the property due to tax foreclosure. So these kinds of things, they have done over and over and over. And it's nothing new. This whole thing with this partition, they say, well, it's lawful. No, it's legal, but it's not lawful by any means. The problem is that in the status of being black, you cannot solve it. Not by being African American and not by having a deed. Now these people think they're going to go and challenge the deed. That's how they're proposing to solve this. They're going to send all these black people out there to challenge the deeds, and they won't win. There's no way for them to win, because the only thing they can do is say, the only thing that a court could possibly do is say, work out a settlement. Because now developers, malls, you see, the county building, imagine the dilemma of that family. The very county courthouse where they have to bring the suit is sitting on their land. Do they stand a chance to win in that court where it's sitting on their land?
No, not at all.
I mean, you got to see what they're up against. A professional baseball training facility is on these other people's land. Do they stand a chance against a professional baseball team to fight that fight?
Another part of that, when you describe how perfect the land is, it's so perfect that they want to go and destroy it. That's what they want to do.
That's all they can do. show you the power that Great Seal had. Great Seal, in Great Seal, we held some elections. And for those people who thought at one time, oh, well, we had elections, and that's okay. Remember, you told me, well, this is okay. This is our little group. We meet, we learn some things. Oh, yeah, that's cool. But you see, these are not just any old elections that we had. We put a government on the record, which is a phenomenal achievement to reestablish a government. I mean, you read about these things in history. You read about how Hannibal, let's talk about the Punic Wars for a minute. Hannibal in the Punic War, in the first Punic War at least, he defeated the Roman Empire. He crossed the Alps on his elephant, and he defeated the Roman Empire and reestablished the power that was Carthage, the Moors, and reestablished the capital at Carthage. Now, they say the capital had fallen, okay, to the Romans, and he reestablished the capital. What are we really saying? Because none of these battles are physical. They're not out there on the battlefield with swords and knives and that kind of stuff they show in the movies. These are court battles. Every one. The Battle of Trenton, the Battle of Brandywine, right? I was stressing that. Battle of Georgetown, Battle of Yorktown. They are all court battles. They're all court battles. And we have a lot of shares. Did you bring yours? I always forget to bring it when I'm going to talk about something I need. You have a little one, this should be in there. Sounds like we didn't bring ours. My Tony's always had his. He didn't bring it. No, actually, probably not in there. Yes, would you please? We can check it anyway.
That's okay. That's a good idea, though.
You have a full one?
Yeah.
Yes, because I know it's going to be in there, rather than taking a chance. Okay.
Get out of here.
So, by the fact that all of these battles are in the courtroom, tells you that there's something phenomenal going on. These people sued to get this land. They had to file a lawsuit against the family and file the lawsuit in a court where they knew the jurisdiction would be agreeable for them to win. You see, because the type of court you use is going to get you a different type of outcome. If you file a lawsuit in a jurisdiction that's foreign to you, you can expect the outcome to be in favor of the other individual. If you file a lawsuit in your own court and the jurisdiction of your people, you can expect that the outcome is most likely going to be in your favor. But what our ancestors stopped doing is filing lawsuits in their own jurisdiction. And they started filing lawsuits in the Albion courts. What other outcome could they expect? Huh? It's still going on.
I'm just thinking that there, as far as dealing with the Magna Carta, when they had the titles, they wouldn't have been decided.
Yes.
So if the family did want to do a title search, they would be behind. The land was petitioned off and they challenged it.
If the families wanted to do a title search,
If their strategy was.
no, they would never find it. You see, titles, this is one of the things I was getting ready to talk about. Under Great Seal, we have the power to issue a title, which is Latin for title. Under Great Seal, because, you see, let's understand the power of a title. A title does not have power just because no government here, this means nothing. That's why for those people who call themselves fiddling, the tiddlers, the dynamite, laboring for a year and a half to write, took us a lot of hard work to come up with the language for that darn document, a lot of research. And then here they go running off and think they got something great and record one with the county. Then they thought, oh, we got a title recorded, now we can go seize the land because we have the title that says it's ours. Well, lo and behold, who in the hell is defending the darn thing? If that county says and that sheriff says you better not step on that property, what good is your title? It's null and void. It's null and void. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And some of this, for some of you who've been in the law class, you know what I'm about to show you. And I want to start off with I want to show you what's happening here. First of all, let's talk about a duel, because everybody has heard this. What is a duel? Duel is short for duo L. So you have two L's fighting it out. A duel. Now most people think that a duel is you select your weapon, whether it be knife, gun, sword, and you turn your back to each other, right? How stupid is this? And you walk off 20 paces and turn around and fight, right? Is that how a duel goes? If I'm wrong, let me know. We're talking about this one.
Which one, the first one?
You did it.
But you're correct.
I said, am I correct about how they say a duel? You turn your back, the one's behind you, you step off 20 paces, you turn around and shoot. Is that a duel?
We talking about, go ahead.
Look, I've seen it 100 times on the
You
record.
mean the guys, you mean the guys with the tight pants and the lip ribs?
That's right.
Right, yeah.
That's what they do. That's what they do. Smack on some gloves and get all dressed up, right? Turn around and go at it, right? One of them falls dead.
I'm standing at the shoe.
Yeah, that's so dumb. Right. Somebody who be that dumb. You fell for it because, look, you thought a duel was a physical fight. It is not. The real word is duello. Duellum is the Latin term. And a duellum is a trial by I have to write this word this way, but a trial by battle, see this is key, by battle or judicial combat. Huh? It says combat. Now, if a duel is a court battle, a duel is a trial, it's a court battle. What's key is this word battle, because they tell us that a battle is this, B-A-T-T-L-E. A battle.
Everything is physical.
Right, it's physical war. Physical, like war. Physical engagement, right? But you see in the law dictionary, they didn't spell it that way. In the law dictionary, it is a battle. And it has a different definition. So y'all have to study the law dictionary. So what's going on here with these partitioning is battle. B-A-T-T-E-L. A battle is a trial by combat. starving to death, and all that kind of stuff like that. Up there in Valley Forge. He was forced to retreat to Valley Forge because he lost the battle of Germantown. What did he lose in Germantown? It was a court battle over something. What was the court battle of Germantown about? Land. Trying to get the people to sign what? Deeds. It didn't work. He was forced to go out to Valley Forge, which is far out there, and the people knew less. And what did he do out there in Valley Forge? He was able to recover. Then he went on to the battle of Trenton. What happened in Trenton? Did he get the people to sign? Did he get the people to sign deeds up there? Huh? Did he lose the battle of Trenton? No. Did George Washington lose the battle of Trenton? No. He won. He got all those people to sign up for deeds up there. He won the battle of Brandywine. Now you see, it all makes sense, doesn't it?
He went on to win the war.
Huh?
They went on to win the war. They went on to win the war.
They went on to win the war. And the war was taking us out of our sovereignty by court battles. Not physical war, because, look, them versus us in a physical war, come on. No. That's a given, right?
That's right.
I was watching a Metro channel that comes up north. And they were talking about New York in 1724. They were showing the so-called free blacks and how they had to fight for the British against George Washington.
Right.
And how George Washington ran out of the upper New York down to Manhattan.
Yes.
And the British eventually lost.
They eventually lost, that's true. But they held out for a long time. And they call them today, and correct me because I know I'm not saying this right, the Rapamo Indians? Arapaho, up there in northern New York. Ramapo, something like that.
Arapaho.
Something like that. Arapaho. Up in the Catskills and all that. Okay, well, up in that area is where, what's the name, Benedict Arnold betrayed George Washington. And what did Benedict Arnold do to betray them? He had the papers in his possession. They said that when they caught Benedict Arnold, he had some papers in his possession that supposedly told the military positions of George Washington and his troops. And he was going to turn that information over to the British. But they caught him, they interceded and caught him. They didn't even know he was a traitor until they caught him with the papers. And they hanged him as a traitor. He was from New York. All right? Now, what did you say? What were the papers? Huh? They weren't deep.
What paper? The legal paper, law paper?
Right. That's correct. And he wasn't going to get them recorded. He was going to take them, and I don't know what, if he was going to turn them over to the British, that means he was going to give it back to the people. In other words, he was telling what they were doing. And they said he was a traitor.
So reality is that he was a patriot.
Who?
Before the people, he was before the people. And not against the
No,
people.
a patriot.
I mean, well, like a patriot.
A patriot is a man, right? Who? Benedict Arnold? He could have been. He had some allegiance to the people that would allow him to betray George Washington. Okay? This is what was going on then, and this is what is going on now. That's all I'm going to say. Y'all can look up the definition, in your own time. And think through this, because this is where we are. And only through the power of Great Seal under our own jurisdiction, will we win this battle. Because we cannot win in their jurisdiction. That is just not feasible. That's just like, you go and play in somebody else's ball field. They have all the equipment, they have all the balls, they have all the resources and everything, and you just show up. All by yourself. Huh?
And I'm by
legally and everything like that. And my great-grandfather should have been a slave at the time that he owned all this land, and he wasn't. And he put together a school. Now, slaves don't own land, put together schools, and own a car. He owned a car, and all these kinds of things like that during the time when slavery was in effect. How is that possible? I didn't understand that even before I became a Moor. So when I heard about the Moors, I said, oh, now the story of my great-grandfather makes sense. And this is happening to all of us. Now, under grace here, and the power of the Tidless is good. The Tidless is a document we've already created, and it works. There's no question about it. We tested it, we know that it works. What does a Tidless do that a deed doesn't? See, this is important because all those people out there who are going to search the web and go and pay attorneys to try to fight a battle for them and all that kind of nonsense, they're not only not going to win because they're black and they're fighting up the back hell in the other one's court, in their adversary's court, but they're not going to win because what they're asking for is deed interest. They're asking the court to take away deed interest from that one and bestow deed interest to them. And that is something that, first of all, the courts cannot do. Even if they come across a judge who's sympathetic and whatever, the court cannot do that. Because deed interest, first of all, what happened in these partition sales? Read the language in it. The language in it says that the man bought he bought interest in 11 acres. See, if you don't know the language, you'll be tricked. They never said that these new companies own that land. They said that these new companies acquired it in such and such. What acquired what? Acquired deed interest in the land. They never said that all these Albions and everything acquired ownership of that land. They never used that terminology. And that is important because what they're saying is they're asking the court, see, the court granted them deed interest. Now, you're a black person and you're going to go to the court and say, I would like to have the deed interest bestowed in me. But there was no, if they had a deed, and the deed, if the family signed a deed, and then the deed was interest in, the deed which represents interest in the land, not ownership of the land. So see, they can never take ownership away.
And that's what title is.
A title. Let me just go ahead and write a title. Right. So let's say this. Here's how they trick the family. And this is why they can't win in their status. The family already owned the land. Okay, can a state board have a titulus in their name? No, they cannot. They can have a titulus in the name of a Moor, right? Under the name of a Moor. A titulus is pure ownership. A deed cannot give you ownership. A deed can only give you interest in it. So when the courts force the partition sale, what they do is they say, we're allowing this individual to buy deed interest in the land. Because the court, being a corporation itself, cannot grant title in land. Did you hear me? A court, a titulus cannot be granted by a court. I mean, it's called by a corporate court. A titulus cannot be granted by a corporate court. So, here's the dilemma of those black people. When they signed the deed in the 1800s or whenever they did, they had two things and didn't know it. They still had title, but now they had a deed No court in the land can give you a title of nobility. Therefore, if a corporate court can't give you a title of nobility, they certainly can't give you a title. Now, what these Negroes don't know is that this is still there on the land. It doesn't matter that they can't go to the county and find a record of it. Because, see, those Albions thought they won this game by burning the paper. And this is one of the things I tell you about your ratio papers, and I tell you all the time, don't worry about that paper. I used to think that paper was so important. So guess what? They locked me up, and they wouldn't let me present my papers. Then when people tried to fax my papers, they turned the fax machine off, and there I am in court with what? No papers. Got to be inside. You have to be the paper. I tell you that all the time. Now, therefore, any Negro who thinks even if they knew about a title, they can't have one, they got to come through us to get that. They got to come through us. And for all those people who think because they stole a piece of paper, that that piece of paper can give them some ownership to some land, they are wrong. Because they do not have a government to back that up. And they do not know how to establish a government, and I won't tell them. They don't. In fact, the only people who know how to set up a government, there's 5 of us who know how we actually set up the government that is race sealed. There's only 5 of us who know how to do it. Now, here's the thing. We know that this exists. Huh? How many of those do we need? We need more than one. You only need one in each state. When King Charles II granted William Penn, Jr. the land patents. What is a land patent? Is it equivalent to a title, or is it equivalent to a deed? Exactly. So King Charles II granted William Penn, Jr. deed interest in Pennsylvania. He did not and could not give him a title to Pennsylvania. So those Albions thought they were slick. They said, oh, if there are any titles to any land in any county in Pennsylvania, we'll burn it. We'll destroy it. And if they can't find the history, then our deeds will be in place, and ha ha ha, tricks on you, because you don't know the difference between a title and a deed, and now you think we own it. We tricked you. And even if you think that there was once a title on the land, we burned them all, so ha ha ha, tricks on you, you can't find it, because you have no proof. When you try to present something in our court and say, where's your proof? You don't have it, you lose. We win. Now, have you ever had something taken from you or stolen from you? How many of you have been fortunate enough to get it back? To get back something that was stolen from you? Say, for example, if your car was stolen, and then you go out and you find the car, do you say, oh, well, it's theirs now?
No.
No. You see, the universe does not allow that to happen to you. That if your car is stolen, the one who stole it knows it's stolen, so when you step up to claim it, they will acquiesce. They won't say, this is mine. They'll be cowardly and they'll be nervous and scared because they know they stole it from you. But say that nobody knew it was yours but you. And they didn't know that. But here you are, and say they did say, well, this is mine now, because now you got to turn it over because now I'm here to claim my land. And then you know what they say? Well, where's your proof? You don't have any proof because they know the ancestors burned all that. Wow. I'm stuck. So you go to claim your car and they say, well, where's your proof? Where's your title? Right? And what happened was they had a friend working in the state, in the DMV in the state, who burned the title, got rid of it, got rid of the whole record of it. Now, you don't have your title, and the state doesn't have a record of it, and they said, well, where's your proof? And what do you say?
Where's your
It's your signature.
They have the car. They have possession of the car. But say, here you go. Here's what happened. Not only did the friend destroy, in the DMV, destroy your title there, right, your certificate title, they printed one up with their name on it, but you know that's your car. How do you want to get your car? Y'all don't straight. You do not need the state to approve you to have a title for you to know that that car is yours. There is nothing in the world to say that you can't go and put a title on the record because that is your car. Now, you put the title on the record. Now, before the one you put on the record, none existed, right? Now they'll be clamoring around trying to find some record of some other document, right? And they don't have it. Because what they had was a certificate of title, and a certificate of title only certifies that a title exists somewhere. It in and of itself is not a title. So then you say, well, look, you got a certificate that says the title exists, right? They said, yeah. I said, well, here's the title it's talking about. Right? You got a certificate that said there's a title somewhere on the record. Now, here it is with my name on it. My grandmother told me, Ella bless her, I said, Grandma, how do we find our way in this complex situation that we're in? So I'm trying to go back and do research and find all this information, and it's convoluted, and there's so many lies, and it's mixed up, and it's places, and I don't have money to get to all these places where all this information is. And she said, justice is not in the past, it is in the future. So don't go to the past to try to find a title on anything. And they sending those people back to genealogy and archives and records. And I used to be there and go into the county trying to find information and trying to find records of where my family owned this and what my family owned here and this and that. And of course, you know, it sent me way out there in La La Land somewhere because they've lied. And they've taken, and I can bear witness to the fact that they will lie on the record. They will change the court transcript at the drop of a dime. They will go into the court record, into your file, and put documents in there that were not even presented in court, and they'll take documents out that were presented in court. They'll document them up. I mean, look, I've been through all that firsthand. So it's nothing for them to change a document on the county record. You see how they doctor photographs and have all our ancestors looking like the Albion with that pasty white powder all over their faces? Right. Now, so I said, fine, because I've been through all this with the courts, battling over the Tiblets. And they said, well, we don't want to talk about that. And I finally had to understand, oh, I'm doing the Dred Scott two-step. Right? And here I am doing my two-step in their court, presenting my title to people who have no capacity to deal with that document. And I had to back up. I said, oh, I see. I'm Dred Scott, and I'm coming to you for you to make a decision on this Tibbetts. They couldn't possibly do it. So they send us around and around and around. So even after I realized it, I said, okay, I'll play a little game because it's costing you a lot of money to have us in here every time we come. Because we're not paying a dime to come to court. We're the plaintiff, right? Or we're the creditor, and all we have to do is show up and create a whole lot of hell for some people, which is what we do every time. Now, and they have to constantly pay their attorneys to battle all the stuff. I write a little something the day before court, go in there and present it and turn it in and send them in total chaos. Just sit down and I don't say a word, right? But I see all the chaos we're going through, and that's what they deserve. So now, we have our government set up, and this is why work with it, all right? And I know that things come up in your lives, and everybody has dilemma and this and that, and you don't have any more dilemma than I do, okay? There is no reason not to participate here, because this is the only way that we can solve this problem. And nobody in the world is doing what we're doing. You talk to anybody out there, you call any of your friends anywhere in the world, I don't care if they're an attorney, a doctor, accountant, a president of a nation, I don't care who they are, they don't know they can't do that. They don't even know what that is. They can't even discuss that. We're the only ones who have the capacity to do that. Albeit our group is small, we're the only ones. So I said, fine. You challenged me to say, well, go and bring us some proof that your ancestors own this land. So you know what I did. Don and I created the Titlers, and we went and got the darn thing recorded on the whole state of New Jersey. We went and recorded the Titlers on the whole Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So now when they go in and they say, well, you owe some taxes. Well, wait a minute. It's not on our title that says we have to pay anybody any taxes. Y'all didn't know that. No? So when we get our act together, and the only reason we don't activate this in full the way we have the capacity to do is because our little government offices are not as organized the way they should be. They're not. Part of the Rural Assembly's job is to put together the protocol for this document. Hell, Don and I created the document. The least the rest of y'all can do is put together a protocol that protects it. Right? That stands behind it. When we put one together for somebody to stand behind it, because one of the things that happens with this, and there are a few people who have it, and one of the things that happen is there are absolutely no taxes. You see, the only reason you have taxes is because there's a deed. If there's a deed, there's taxes. Over here, there are no taxes. Here's the way it works. As soon as you put a deed on the county record, that tax map information is there. And you try to record a deed with the county that doesn't have the tax map information on it, they won't record it because you tried. So don't even think that you can do that. But what happens when you put a titless on the record is that it supersedes the deed, as if the deed doesn't exist. So they can't put it in their tax system. There's no structure, there's no interface, in other words, for them to use. They can't use it. They can't do that. It doesn't go together. So you won't even receive a tax bill from the municipality. It's just not no taxes. I mean, no property taxes, no school assessment tax, no sewer tax, and no water tax. Wow. People are paying thousands of dollars a year in these taxes. A patent is a grant. Anytime you hear the word patent, it's grant a patent. And wherever there's a grant, there's a sovereign that granted it to someone or something, usually non-sovereign. So wherever you see the term patent, think the term deed. Patent, deed. Patent, deed. They go together. So there's no such thing as an allodial patent. Just like there's no such thing as an allodial deed. I mean, it's just not there.
Yeah, allodial type.
Absolutely. And then the only allodial titles are the ones we created. So see now, what we did is we said, well, we put a title on the state of New Jersey. Now we're going to start activating that title coming up next year. Anyway, what happens is we say, us, collectively, the Moors, own the state of New Jersey. We own all the land in New Jersey. So wherever we are, wherever we live, we don't have to pay any taxes anywhere. The next step is, by the way, you own my land. they caught in a catch-22. They don't have a deed. They said that the titles didn't exist. I have the court decisions to prove what they said. You can't, no titles. Fine. You didn't, there's no law that said we can't create one, so we did. So it doesn't matter that our ancestors' information is all burned. It's gone. It's history. We create something that is new, that applies to what we're dealing with today, right now. So now, they don't have a law, any legal, any statutes, and they don't have any codes that addresses this issue over here. So it's like, have you ever wound up like a toy or something, like an electronic toy or something, you put too much power in it and just starts going?
Energizing button.
Huh?
Energizing button.
Right, like that. And they just start going all crazy and everything, like and start blowing up, kind of like that. Well, this is what's going to happen to them as we exercise the power of the timbers, because it hits a nerve that they can't, it starts giving them spasms because they can't solve it. They can't handle it. There's nothing in their system, in their mechanism. You know, it's like putting sugar in a gas tank. Right? The gas tank goes crazy, so it just goes into arrest. It's just, right? Huh?
Another thing, they can't do what they usually do, and that's imitate us because they can't have titles.
That's right. So the very Constitution that our ancestors put in place for us protects us over here. Because they can't go against that Constitution, which is a court order. They can't go against that document, lest they destroy their own government. Yes. Do what?
Like when they manufacture a car, they come up with a title for the car. What's called that? And the dealers have it. Now, they know they can't have the title, so what they do is when you buy the car, they send it to the state, require that they send that document to them so they can destroy it because they can't have titles.
They don't destroy it, and it's not a title either.
It's a certificate of title.
Certificate of
Of
origin.
origin.
Right.
And the state records it
Right.
under their jurisdiction.
Right, but you can, but what the state people told me, they either you destroy it or you put it on microfiche. But the point is, nobody can have it because,
But it doesn't matter.
yeah, I know, but their point is, you can't have it because it now belongs to us and we're leasing it out to you.
Yes.
And the title that we give you only,
Certificate.
the certificate of title that we give you means that we own it. And that you really don't have any ownership, then that's why we can do.
But what gives them ownership is not the certificate of origin. What gives them ownership is when you apply for a certificate of title. Here's what happens. You fill out an application for a certificate of title, what they call your registration papers, right? You register a car.
Right, they won't, the dealers won't even get that.
Okay, it's got nothing, the dealers can't because it doesn't exist. Nobody has a title unless they're a mover. Let's start right there. Nobody. You with me? Get that. They have a certificate of origin, and the certificate of origin, the whole purpose of that is so that the state can track how many brand new automobiles are being sold in their state, so that they know how much revenue to expect from that sale. Revenue from the corporation, not from you. But the corporations have to pay revenue because they have to pay tax to the state. And they have to pay licensing fees to the state. So it's the state's way of tracking the automobile industry. Got nothing to do with you. Okay? Let's finish with that part. What gives the state jurisdiction over you and your automobile is when you sign the application, the registration forms. Let's go ahead. It's the same story over and over and over again. Death certificates, all of this is registered now. Marriage, votes, professional licenses, do you, or any of you, get these things recorded? Why don't you get your automobile recorded with the camera? Why don't you do that? Don't you know that when you send it up to the state, what makes Trenton the capital of New Jersey? Oh, I'm sorry. What? Yeah. What about Mercer County? That's where they have recorded their corporate papers. The corporate papers of the state of New Jersey Incorporated, corporate papers are recorded in Mercer County. Therefore, makes it their headquarters. That's all. And therefore, when you register your automobile with them, they take the same documents, they sign off on it, and they get it recorded in Mercer County. Now you're under their jurisdiction. But guess what? You didn't have to go to them to get your title of your automobile recorded in Mercer County. You with me? So the dealer who sells you the car has got nothing to do with that. Nothing at all. That's up to you to do.
So do you take action? So do you take the car straight up?
No. Even if you do or even if you don't, it doesn't matter whether the car is financed or not. That's a totally separate thing. What we're talking about is ownership of the car. Because the part is that if you finance a car, you therefore give the finance company interest in the automobile until the debt is paid. You're putting up the car as collateral just like you put up a house as collateral or a boat as collateral. You're saying that I agree to pay this bill, and if I don't, here's my collateral, which is my good faith that I'm going to pay you. And if I don't pay you, then you can take this. So in some cases where people have good credit, they don't necessarily have to put up collateral. There are people who can borrow money against their house without putting the house up as collateral. You understand? There are people who borrow money for a car and put up the house as collateral and not the car. You understand? They borrow against the equity in their house. And if you borrow against the equity in the house, the chance of having your car repossessed is almost zero. Because what will happen is they'll put a lien against the house in order to collect. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. Or it depends on how much money. I've seen them become real corrupt. They'll repossess the car and still put a lien against the house. Okay? All right, but for Albion, they don't do that. For Albion, they don't repossess. They just put a lien against the house. You see? And that's why Albions are always buying cars against the equity in their house, because they know they're in the game and they're not going to have their thing repossessed. The most that'll happen to them is that a lien gets put against the house, and it goes bad on their credit or something, but they'll still have the car, and then eventually, if they want to, they'll pay off the debt and have the lien removed. Or they'll fight it and have the lien removed and not pay a dime. Right. Somebody has a question about that.
Well, no, I just want to sort of confirm what you said as far as about the automobile is concerned. I have a friend of mine who's worked in past here, lived there for years, and he left her a car. She tried to sell it, she couldn't find the certificate to start it. So she went to Mays Landing to get it. And the woman told her that he didn't own the car, neither do you. The state owns this car. And they told her, and then they wanted her to bring, what else did he give you? What else did he leave you?
Because his estate was probably put in probate court.
Well, they were trying to get it booked.
And in probate, that's what happens. The state takes everything.
They told her right out, you didn't own this car, and you don't either. Yeah, she got it out.
But see, state boards can't have title to anything. They can't have title to automobiles, they can't have title to property, boats, they can't have their birth certificates recorded directly, they can't have, driver's license, death certificate, marriage, voting, none of that. This is reserved And the other thing is that before we created this template, we went around trying to find an example of a title. We went on a hunt. We spent days and days and days going to different county deeds offices, trying to find, going back and back and back in time, trying to find a title somewhere. And of course, you know, we didn't. But we didn't know that at first. I mean, we were dumb about this. You know, it took us almost a year to finally give up and say, there are no titles out there. There are no titles out there. What are we going to do? We were very discouraged because we felt that because they destroyed everything and they're hiding everything, we don't stand a chance of ever finding a resolution to this problem. They won. That's how we were thinking at first. We kept saying there's something else, something else. Fortunately, Don is from Kiskaya, where they still had a significant amount of the sovereign way of life. So we started dealing with the woman who is now his wife. And we asked her to send us a title. She sent us like 3 or 4 different ones. One for an automobile, one for an office building, one for residential, and different things like that. Of course, it's all in Spanish. So Don had to interpret. So Don spent the hours to interpret all the language in the title and convert it to English so I could understand it. Then we had some miscommunications because there's some words in Spanish that don't easily translate to English and vice versa. So we had to kind of work things through about that. But the problem with the titles that we received was that they were somewhat bastardized because they were coming out of Dominican Republic, okay, instead of Kiskaya. So we had to work through some things. But we managed to pull enough language and understanding out of those Spanish titles and create the template document that we have today. Now, that set us on the right track, but then, of course, there they had basically a homogeneous culture, and they had basically a lot of the recorded information of property ownership intact, historically. So they didn't have the same dilemma that we have here. Because in Kiskaya, there are no deeds. So this whole system over here about deeds doesn't exist down there. All right? So we had to kind of get an understanding because Fabia didn't understand deeds. So we had to explain to her the difference between a deed. She says, well, why should anyone want one of those? Why should you want one? Like, she thought that we were talking about that we wanted to, you know, have deeds. We had to explain to her, no, we're trying to get rid of deeds. That's why we want this template. So anyway, we managed to get all of that put in place. But here's the thing. If we were not moored, and this is the thing we had to learn, if we were not moored, none of this over here would apply to us even if we knew the difference between a title and a deed. We couldn't exercise this over here. And the other thing that's important is that if we didn't have a government on the record, we could have this document on the record, but who could speak for it? Because contrary to what some of these renegade people think, you cannot be sovereign by yourself. You cannot do it. And when I first engaged in this battle, I got beat up time and time again because I was taught that I'm going into court talking about, I'm a sovereign. I'm a sovereign. But that's not the proper language. You have to remove the I. And you have to say, my people are a sovereign people. Therefore, I am sovereign. Can't just go in there, I'm sovereign all by myself. Because the question is, where are your people? You are Moors, where are the other Moors? Right? You didn't under this race field, show me something. Show something, prove it. And they knew that they had destroyed all of the history. So then, those that came before us, the Moors, no matter how noble and how intense they were to try to make a difference and be on the right path and this and that, all of them, just like me, were stuck trying to find something in the past. And you cannot do it. You will be lost forever if you go digging into those archives to try to find anything. You will be lost, just like we were. So you have to go inside and find the answers inside. Then you can go and see the proof of that out there. Yes, sir.
just by the very nature of us going back and seeking our sovereignty in our story and our past, a lot of things become relevant.
Yes.
And kind of guide where we're going with it. We have to look inside.
We have to look inside.
Because we're being created, because we have to create where we're going.
That's right.
But they put a lot of stuff in our path.
They put a lot of stuff in our path. But fortunately, we're able to see our way through. We have enough light within ourselves to see through all the garbage. You know, which is one of the reasons I asked all of you, stop reading that garbage. Remember you asking me about taking a law class at Rutgers or something like that? I said, don't waste your time doing that because they'll send you way out there someplace, totally away from what the reality, the real deal is. You have to stop reading that garbage. I, for one, have stopped reading the newspaper. Unless somebody calls me and says there's something of interest in there, I don't read it. I don't watch television with their news on there either. I cannot do it. I cannot keep absorbing that garbage and find my way back home. It's too distracting because the stories, sometimes if you hear it, it kind of gets you to wondering about this thing over here, or that thing over there. And here's your path right here. If you're on your path, you shouldn't be, every path that you come across, going down that one a little bit to see what it is. Going down that one a little bit just to see what that is. Don't do that because every time you get away from your path, that takes you longer to get to your destination. And I had to finally realize that. Right.
And you just sit there like, how dumb are people?
Exactly.
They can't, see what is really going on.
Exactly.
Half the time it's like you're talking to kindergarten.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, they were talking to kindergarten. Now, here's the thing. How do we begin to solve this problem? First of all, don't be here and be scared. Because if you're scared, this is not the place to be. Because we're in the battle. Okay? Now, we're getting our land back. Now, we're getting our land back. We're getting our money back out of their treasury. We're getting our gold. We're getting control of our government. I'm telling you, we're going to do all those things. Now, here's one of the first steps. My attitude was, okay, you say I cannot possess this property because you got guns and you got all those things. You say that. That's okay. You got your gun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slap a lien against that property. I'm going to slap a lien against it. And I'm going to get it recorded and I'm going to go on about my merry way, take care of my baby and, my children and everything. I'm just going to let it sit there. And every time you go and try to borrow money, guess what? You can't do it. Huh?
I'm going to say, excuse me, but once this is done, it's actually a protection for you. Am I correct? Because only you can take it off of it.
Only you can take it off.
So you really put a shield over yourself.
You
by
put a
doing
shield
it.
over yourself.
If they do anything to you, they can never get it up. Am I correct?
That's correct, but it's not just any old link.
Right, but I understand.
It's not you go to Staples and get a copy of the lien document that they have there, that they printed up, and you fill it out and go put it. No, you better not do that. You find yourself in more trouble than you bargained for. So this is a special lien because it's a great deal lien. And it has multiple signatures on there. Just like what I did with Joyce. We put a whole slew of people's names in there, about 30 people. And the total lien was for $30 million over 100 years. Now, you got 30 people to deal with, $30 million to deal with, and 100 years. How are they going to solve that? Right, y'all say? All contractors, boom, stop working. Any contractors on the job? Not anymore, they're gone. Because contractors know, as soon as there's a lien, they may not get paid. So, away they go. This is the same thing we did the Land Square work. What happened? We did all this work, this design work for this community group. We placed a regular lien, because we weren't into Rayfield and all that at that time. Because the state of New Jersey was involved and had funded the project and all that, we sued them all and everything. Eventually, we went round and round and round in court, and eventually, their judges agreed that there was a deficiency in our lien, and so he removed the lien. He issued a court order to remove our lien. We were upset. They owed us over $200,000. Now,
Did you go back and do it again?
yeah, but we did it again after Great Seal was in place. After Great Seal was in place, I wrote up some special language, prepared a lien, we recorded it with the county, took it back in there, boom, they have a problem. All the contractors, everything stopped, right, Jamal? They have people over there talking about, oh, they want to sell them everything. They haven't done a dime worth of work over there, it's been over 2 years. And they're not going to do anything, and they can't do anything because this lien is in place, and when they tried to take us to court, all I did was send back a one little page thing, lack of jurisdiction. Haven't heard from them. That's been almost a year ago. So finally they tried to sue us again, and they tried to say, oh, well, they couldn't find us. I said, okay, y'all want to be slick? Y'all want to try, because we put it in the name of the company. I said, okay, I'll fix you. I did some work on the project. I named about 6 or 7 different people. You did some work on the project for one of your names. You did some work for one of your names. So now you got all these different people with liens against that project. And they're all under Great Seal. They are not moving. So I decided, you won't pay us, we can't own the property, you won't have it either. It'll sit and it'll go to ruin. But you won't have it either. So now, that's the first step. That stops everything. This is the reason all those folks are upset with Joyce. We put a $30 million lien against that project and told all the people who would attend the auction, you buy it, we're going to sue you. Huh? Oh, and we will. And we can even sue them in their court. Just to cost them money. And we'll sue them where? In Camden, and they're down here in Virginia, so they have to either get an attorney up here or come all the way up here to fight this case. And all we're going to do is put a piece of paper into the court and go on about our business. And have them in turmoil for years. In the meantime, the land is still in the hands of the family. And that's the key. So, this is the first step in how we solve this problem. And this can be done because our ancestors have the blood, sweat, and tears and all this in the land. And we don't even have to have a tenant, because you asked me about this tenant the other night.
Right.
To place a lien, you don't need a tiddler. All you have to say is you have a claim, a stake in the land because of some ancestral tie. Do we have that? Yes, we do. And this is how we're going to stop it. Because what happens is, once the lien is in place, we did this to the parquet building. They can't borrow any money. They cannot borrow any money. And guess what else when the lien is in place? It clouds, what they call clouds the title. So they can't sell it. And they can't sell it unless the lien gets settled or removed. And the only way the lien can get removed is if you go to court and they win and they have a court order that says the lien is removed. And because it's not in the jurisdiction of their court, they can't go to court and get the lien removed. So we are tying up property and they can't do anything. They can't borrow any money and they can't sell it. That creates a dilemma. Because they can't even sell it to become liquid.
So this little red tail group that we have here is really wreaking havoc.
Wreaking havoc. That's why that little lien, that little $30 million lien, little one-page document, or was it 2 pages, Charlie? I don't know. I want to say that it's 1 page.
What, Joyce's lien?
Yeah, 2 pages. Okay, it's a little ragtag 2-page document that went after all these people, created all this turmoil, and stopped those people from stealing her family's land. And it created such a turmoil that all these articles come out in the paper. trying to get black people, and I'm going to tell you the purpose of those articles, because most of her family, all of her family, well, they're state boards. But the lien is in her name, right? It's in her name in care of the family, right? Okay. Now, they can't stop that. But what they're trying to do is to get the family to, by seeing all these articles, and I have another one here, seeing all these articles in the paper to tell Joyce, oh, this is the way you should go. This is what we should be doing, and get the family at odds with each other. So the thing is, even if the family let them fight. So what? They can't remove that lien. Right? Let them sue her. So what? They can't remove that lien. Whatever they can do, they can't remove that lien. That's it. That's history. And that land is up, I told Joyce, it's up to the family to work out what you're going to do with it. Let the family fight over it, whatever, but at least you own it. Right? It's your house. You can fight, kick, box, whatever you do in there. But it's yours.
I just had a thought. The people that are parking in the parkade, they can put their money in escrow because there's a lien against the property and ownership is confused, so they can not pay whoever they was paying and put their money in escrow, right?
That's correct, and we're going to do that and make sure that they put the money in escrow. I just wanted to drain them financially a little bit. There's another part of the court case coming up on the 29th of January. And the case is taking a long time because it is a landmark case, setting a precedent, so you don't expect these things to happen overnight. So the January 29th will be going back, causing them to spend a whole lot more money. See, they were already in bankruptcy, which of course you know, and they already had bills and stuff like that they have to pay. And my intent is to destroy them financially and to do what we already have the lien against it. So now, even once they come out of bankruptcy, they can't borrow any money and they can't sell the building. So the building's sitting there, it's becoming more and more run down, right? Because they don't have the money to fix it up. They can't do anything to the building, right? They can't even get any new tenants. Huh? Right, they can't get any new tenants. Even the space to be left is still vacant over there. They can't move anybody else into the building, right? Because of all this turmoil and this stuff going on. The next step we're going to do is sue the tenants. We're going to sue the tenants because you're paying money to them and that money's supposed to come to us. So, oh yeah, they have to be sued and we're going to win. They're going to pay us. But we have to get them to a point where they, in terms of the court battle, we have to really weaken them, drain them, and then we file some more stuff with them. Because they got a lot of very powerful people that are owners of it. They're wealthy, and the more money they we know this. So anyway, because of the power of what we've done here, and this is why anybody else out there who would want to put a lien on something or whatever, they'd be forced into the corporate jurisdiction because you have to have a government that backs it up. Okay? You have to have a government that backs it up. So, and what is happening, what is going to happen even more as we get more of our paperwork in place and stuff like that, then other countries will have an exchange, and that is going to give us even more power. We'll be able to grow as we begin to communicate and get a few logistical and technical problems squared away. But at least we're at the juncture where we're not having to fight amongst ourselves. We spent, 4 years going through that. Fighting amongst ourselves, being attacked from within and all that kind of stuff like that, and it just ate away at us. I know it ate away at me, constantly having to hear that kind of stuff and deal with all these internal issues and stuff like that. And I feel finally we have breathing room, we have a very good group, and just as I said to Gio last night, I said, we don't have the numbers that we used to have. But to me, we have a much better group of people than we've ever had. The people who know, understand, are conscious, and committed to this. And that is worth more than having 1,000 people who are helter-skelter and all that. Okay? We certainly can't grow that way. This whole thing about the land is the predominant issue for us. It is more of an issue than the money, because the money is spendable, it's expendable, it's something that comes and goes. But the land, once we possess it, we'll possess it always. And that is important. And we must possess it, and we must control it. And the resources that are generated from our land. Two things we must have. We must live cost exempt in our own land, and the people who are using our land for commercial purposes must pay us. The two things. We should not be paying anybody, we should not be putting money into anybody's corporate hand to live on our land. It's different if we pay money, to buy service goods and services or something like that. But even those same companies that we buy goods and services from have to pay their land use assessment for using our land. They must pay that. And then we'll pay them for a coat or a hat or something like that. They're going to pay our land use assessment too. But these things must be in place. And the power is, they can't stop us from placing a lien. And a lien will destroy a company. A lien will destroy a municipality. A series of liens in a municipality will destroy them financially.
So they can't get bond money because
They can't sell bonds if there's liens. See, they have to depend on, think of it this way. Say all the properties abandoned and whatever like that, that any city proclaims that they own, deed interest in. And if we were to take that list, even a part of it, even 100 houses of it, and place liens against them, it would destroy them. Because that sends danger signals to the bondholders. Uh-oh, how much more liens are going to be placed against these properties? And if there's a lien, then they can't use that property as collateral to get a loan. Yes, Charlie?
Don't forget about HUD. If it's any grants they get.
Right, that's right. Not just HUD, Department of Transportation, any of that. Because if there's any money that a municipality gets from any federal agency, transportation, education, HUD, whatever, when there's a lien placed, they can't get grant money. They can't get grant money for that thing that the lien is placed against. So let's say if there was a group of houses in a bad neighborhood and they wanted to tear them all down and put a new housing, low-income housing or something like that. But suppose out of 50 houses in that neighborhood, 10 of them had liens. Guess what? They can't get that grant money because there's liens against that property and they can't use it as collateral for their tax base, what they call their rateables. They can't include those properties with liens. So it destroys them. And with people with black and Negro thinking and all that kind of stuff like that there, it does not work because, first of all, they don't think like this. They're scared. They're just Negroes, that's all for that. So the other thing is because they don't have the status, and even if they did, they don't have a government that says, we back these liens. There's no one group of people that say, yes, this is true, that this is ancestral land, and yes, this lien is valid. And yes, we are on the record as saying that. You have to get on the record and say it on the record. You can't just go out there and stand on the steps and call it a press conference or have a march on Washington. So, operating according to the law, the way we have been doing, is what's going to get us all of our land back. And all this nonsense they're writing in the newspapers, they're going to start writing more and more and more of it as we move and shake up the world. And I used to wonder, and I'll say this in closing, things are supposed to be happening for us come 2004. Right. And I used to shake my head and I said, I don't see how that's going to happen. How is that going to happen by 2004? When there's nothing out there that's changing the way they are conducting business to the world, but then it's business as usual. Then September 11th happened. I said, whoa. into the font called wingdings. You did it? And you type in Q33 NYC. In all capitals. And you're going to come up with something very, you did it?
World Trade Center building.
What's first? I don't know, y'all know I can't draw. You know, like a shark. You ever say that's a shark? That's a plane. Okay. Okay, what else is it?
Thumb up in, it's the two buildings, thumb up in, peace sign or something like that. No, Skull and Bones.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Skull and
There's
Bones.
a skull. You all know I'm not dying, don't expect me to draw. Crossbones. And then this. And then like a thumbs up.
Yeah, it comes up.
You know, that's the hand. That's the knuckle, baby. Y'all know. Right? That's the thumb.
That's the middle finger, right?
Get the jump out of here.
All right, well, anyway. It's the plane, the two buildings, the telephone, the start date, and the thumbs up. And that's in Microsoft Word. Now, that was in there before September 11th.
That was in there from the time we made.
That software. It's been in there for a number of years.
No.
Uh-huh.
The point is that that was in the working long before it happened. Because you can go get some old copies of Word, if you still have it, and it's in there.
It only goes back, I think, to 98. That's what, so it's in there. But the key is that you have to type in these letters in order to get these symbols.
So, I mean, skull bone means death.
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 And who wins, and they win. Like, thumbs up. Charlotte.
And Skull and Bones is also a secret society.
It's a secret society that George Bush belongs to.
Right.
Both of the Bush belong.
Both of the Bushes, right. So I just thought that was very interesting, but the thing about this, and the reason I mentioned it at all relative to us is that these things are not just happening because chaos out there in their world. These things are happening because us, let me give you a scenario. Here in Camden, for example, you know they always have fires in Camden. Right, especially they say Mischief Night. And you know that's not children out there starting those fires. Right? What happened in the riots? And they had riots in the 60s and 70s and all that. Those were not our people out there rioting and burning and this and that. That was those Jewish proprietors burning their own buildings and getting the insurance money so they could move to the suburbs. And they left those ragtag, burned out buildings, dilapidated buildings in our neighborhoods. Okay? Now, a lot of those buildings are still there in a lot of our neighborhoods. In Camden, I'm sure you can go to any shopping district, Broadway, Market Street, Federal Street, any of those places like that, and you're going to find a can use them to borrow any money, could they? Yeah, they could burn it, but that doesn't remove the lien. But wait a minute, if they burn it, say if they burn it, and there's a lien, the insurance company might not pay.
They use that as
Because the insurance,
they use that as an argument
not to pay because we may have to pay the people who have this lien instead of you.
It will happen that way because of what's being said in the link.
That's
It says
correct.
that the title exists.
That's correct. And that's what it's going to say.
So it won't.
And it'll be correct. A title does exist. And we have it. So you see the dilemma that's created. So here's something, a scenario where they say, well, tearing down all this stuff. And maybe one could argue that they did it themselves because they were in so much debt that they wanted to just destroy the whole thing and now collect the insurance money as opposed to being in all that debt. Right? You could make that argument.
That's what, $40 million the first couple of days after that.
For the defense.
But yeah,
There's only one black woman in California that voted against that.
yeah.
So they get a lot of money.
We know sad part about, well, aside from that is, they collected all this blood.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They collected.
Yeah,
And a certain type of blood too.
Right. I mean, they were very specific about the type of blood they wanted, and they would start turning people away. And they never used it on anybody because somebody used them.
Yeah.
Right, you're all dead.
But the point is, though, where'd that blood go? See what I'm saying? They collected the blood, and obviously, you know, it's not like they collected the blood because it was going to go to quote unquote some victims, because they never showed up to the hospital. You know, they never needed it. So it got to the point where they had so much blood they said, you know what? We don't even need any more for a while because we got such a supply. Where you go?
But now they're asking for more.
No, but where did that supply go?
Yeah, what do you think of it?
They used it. I believe they used it for themselves.
I think they're gonna use it. I think it's gonna be,
It has to be used already.
it's gonna be a massive.
Why do you think,
You can't save blood.
why do you think they need blood? First of all, how long can you save it? Even if in the refrigerator? 2 months?
90 days, 60, 90 days.
Okay.
Max.
What do you think they do with the blood?
Somebody told me.
Drink it?
Yeah, somebody told me.
Depends on whose blood it is.
Right, somebody told me to look at the movie Blade.
Blade? I've never heard that.
Wesley Snipes.
Wesley Snipes.
Wesley Snipes
Okay.
is the only vampire that can walk in dead. And
Okay.
then all of the vampires around the world met and they turned on the sprinkler system and blood came out of it and they went crazy. And they have these people.
But you see, it's not anybody's blood.
Well, the key behind that movie, they wanted
Just ours.
Wesley Snipes' blood, who,
Right.
with his blood, would allow them to walk.
They walk.
Right.
Okay.
They walk.
And drain the blood
Okay,
from
well,
them.
that makes sense.
Right.
That makes sense. But the thing is, I don't think they got a whole lot of our blood in all that. And I think they probably had to destroy all that blood they got.
Because they didn't want his blood.
Right.
And,
It's useless, right?
And we weren't coming out, but those of us who did go, their blood got labeled differently than the other folks' blood
Yeah.
that they were collecting.
Yeah.
I talked to a couple people who went and donated blood, and they got put in, like, you could be in this line here, and then had, like, people here collecting blood, and they were just sending us to certain places where they were collecting blood versus the other folks, so that they didn't run that problem out. Whose blood is this in this corner here? Because we know whose blood it is.
But they still didn't get enough. It's not enough. They have to have a continuous supply of it. So even whatever they got out of September 11th is just, you know, like a Band-Aid on a hemorrhage. You know what I'm saying? The American Red Cross has continuous blood drive. But our people are out of there. When they came up with AIDS, our people were out of the blood donation system. We don't like getting needles anyway, and then here they are talking about AIDS from a needle? Oh no, I'm not getting anybody's bloodline. Because our people are too scary about that kind of stuff.
I mean, have you heard this? I heard this from a guy named Valentine. I heard he was informed.
He is, and
But
a
he
bad
said-
one at
He
that.
said something one day when we left out of his lecture, and we spoke to one side. He said prior to that, President Bush and after the Senate resigned.
Resign.
Yeah.
No.
Well, this is what he said. Now, they kept their position for the sake of the peace of the...
No.
But he said he
Oh,
resigned.
Valentine is an idiot. See, stay away from that kind of stuff. Charles,
I just want to say that the head of the Red Cross resigned.
Yeah.
the head of the Red
Was
Cross.
it the chairman or the president? It was a woman.
Oh,
That was
okay.
not a woman. She resigned.
You know, Dole's wife used to be president of the Red Cross for many years.
Right.
Dole's wife. But no, the president and the senator.
Well, the only reason why I brought that up, and it sounds stupid to me, but look at the cross, skull and bones, look at the Jews.
Whoa. You see this thing right here?
Well, yeah, we
It's
know.
yours.
We know.
No, everybody in the world knows. That's yours. Because let me show you something else, okay? They are Jewish.
Mhm.
And we are the original Jews. Jews.
Mhm.
They are Jewish, you were a Jew. Jewish, you were a Jew. Yes, Chuck.
And the 6-point star that the Jewish uses is interlock. Ours is overlap.
Overlap, that's right. Interlock.
There's interlock.
Right, that's true too. But now, let me show you something. See, they're fighting a battle that they cannot win. Because they are fighting Zuriatis. Watch what she said. She said, I sell law and master. Let me tell you how powerful this is. You go to a restaurant and you say, well, I'm tax exempt. They want to give you a hassle? Say, well, prove it. Write that on the receipt. Give it back to them. Take that to your manager and see don't you get tax exempt. You don't have to say anything else. Don't take your racial papers and pull out photo ID. Don't do any of that. It's, that's the thing. Now, what does that say? You know. It says something else. It says something else. So when we put our, you were asking about your documents, right? So we have some new documents coming out. A new letterhead. Huh? That's what I did, didn't I? Oh, yeah, that's right. We did do that sometimes. But he said, oh, okay. I said, show that to your manager. He said, oh, right. Then you go back and say anything to the manager. All right. Then we have our flag. How do you do the star?
We got you.
All right, the star. But what's key is, see, that's there and that is there. And this sits right in the middle, between there. So the distance between any of the points on the star and the curve of the moon are equal. They're all the same. So if you could draw a dashed line, you know I'm not Don. Don will do a much better job than me. It will be equal. Okay, so it sits right there in the middle. What does that say? What does that say? I, right? That's the star? Actually, there should be a 6-point star. I am. I am. That's what our flag says. They can't fight that. government operates. Have y'all ever tried to find it? I tried to find how the imperial government of the Manchuria, the last emperor and all that, what did they do in their government? How did they activate things? How did they get things done? I know it was an empire, but what do you do in an empire? Because I wanted to know, so I wanted a model so we could set up an empire for Great Seal. We use the language, but do we know? It's on our Great Seal papers, but where's our empire? Huh? Where is the empire? Tell me.
Right here.
It is inside of you. Why? Prove it. I am. It's not plural. Pi. I. What is pi? 3.14? What's the factor necessary to form a circle? What's the circle? 360 degrees. An empire is an I am. Pi. I. No title. So when you say an imperial government, you're saying it's a government of those who say I am. They cannot fight that. They cannot fight that because everybody wants you to have a representative in Washington to block you. They want you to have a representative on the city council to do what? Block you. They want you to have a representative on the EEO commission to do what?
Block me.
The Human Relations Commission to what?
Block.
Block.
And the bar.
They want you to have rights. The Bar Association to do what?
Block.
They want the AMA for the doctors to do what?
The dental association for the dentists.
For the dentists,
Oh.
right? They want you to go and get registered. To do what? Block you from exercising I am capable of doing myself. You are the empire. The empire is inside of you. Don't go looking all out there. Where's my empire? And then, well, because they'll ask you that in court. Where is this empire? My empire is right here inside of me. I am. And that's what that star impression represents. And that's why every nation on the planet, they may have a star impression some kind of way, but it's not correct. Even India, you know they keep showing India and Pakistan against each other, feuding, blah, blah, blah. India's flag is green with a white star impression, and the thing is tilted. Did you see it? It's tilted because it can't be correct. It cannot have the correct sacred geometry in it. They're not allowed. And if they dare try to do it, they'll be assassinated. They better not try to take that seat, because they know only the right ones can take that seat. And the right ones, when we step up, does anybody say you're not a Moor? Do they say you're not from here when you say you're a Moor? No, they don't say that. They'll never say that. Say you're a Moor and this is your land, nobody challenges that at all. They can't get there. So that's the conclusion of this is my land. This is the flag for my land. We are the empire. This is why. So, don't be misled. And now we have a situation where everybody in the world has a little bit of this. On their dollar bill, they put that, the capstone is not attached. Everybody takes a piece and they twist it and contort it just a little bit because they're not sovereign and they can't use it in its direct form. Why? They're powerful. They're the most powerful military-industrial complex in the world. Right? Why can't they use? Why couldn't they put that capstone on that pyramid? They're not the right one. What would happen if they did it? They would get killed. And Zodiacus would they give me the signal like, woo-hoo. They do that to me.
I just want to add on what the author was asking, only if you stay in the light.
Right.
Right.
I understand.
Then that could be your demise.
Those Moors who have left and have corrupted this, gone out there prostituting for pennies, that's what I said.
Better believe that.
Said pennies. They lost the light. They got off the path. They can't get back here. Even if they, at some point in time, we would allow them back, and I'm saying that that would be a judgment call at that time, whatever. Even if they were to come back, they have lost, because we've moved so fast and so far, and we're doing things that even if they were to come back now, they'd be lost. They have to go back to beginner's class. Really, if they come back, that's where they would have to go. Yes. And then
Because this is something I don't understand. I mean, even when I talk to the people that promote this stuff, they really can't give me the answers. Because I mean, it seems to be like a camp with Noble Drew Ali over here, another camp over here with Cedar Bay over here, and then when you talk to people who are, dealing with these camps, my question always comes to them is, well, even if that's true, what you're saying is true, who appointed you? I mean, I don't get it. I mean, it's like, you want to say all the stuff about Cedar Bay over here in the closet, that's it. But when these people want to check on people, they have to get in touch with you. How come? I mean, like, I don't get it. I mean, why? You tell me that these people have to call you to see if these people, I don't get it, help me out. I mean, like, I'm
I don't get it either.
What is he saying?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking. They have to check with.
Okay. Noble Drew Ali. I mean, you got the.
And those people who follow.
That whole thing, right? We have people who are in charge of that who say that people who are registered or whatever under them, that there's people from this only what they say, that there's people from the government that call them to verify that these folks are. I'm saying, okay.
They're lying.
Yeah, no, but my point is,
Let me tell you that straight up. They're lying.
But my point was,
Been there, done that.
is, well, that's true. Who appointed you? I mean, like, why is it that they're calling you to verify that these folks are who you say they are? I don't get it. I mean, help me understand this. And I can't get the answers. So I'm trying to understand what's happening with Moors in general in terms of why is it this polarity?
Well,
There's one simple answer.
go ahead.
You gotta dig this.
Niggas dressed up as Moors.
Anytime you got a hard-headed person doing their own thing, don't want to listen to nobody, run up in the room and destroy everything, talk about they putting it in place. It takes more than just saying. Anytime you do the research and you research Noble Drew Ali and see the limitations as it's put against your moral sovereign statute that you found with somebody else. A Moorish Science Temple Incorporated tells you it's a corporation.
Yes.
Now you don't have to.
I have a copy of their corporate papers, in fact. They're incorporated in Cook County, Illinois.
And you don't have to rocket science to realize that it's corporate to corporate.
No, I understand that, but what I'm trying to get at is how is it that continues to happen with people who are quote unquote poor? I mean,
Well, let me say something in response to that. When I first came in to Great Seal, there was no such thing as class. I created that. I did. And in fact, Charles A's class is one of the first classes I gave. And I didn't even charge for the classes. Right? And I used to have them in my office like every Wednesday, right? Like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, or something like that. And I did that for about a year. And quality was so bad, I was embarrassed to have them because as a professional and owning my own business, the quality of what I could put out of my own office was 100 times better than that. Bad copies. And there was no such thing as recording anything. They didn't know anything about that. Nobody else does that. I created that because that's what I found that was the proper thing to do. Now, then people say, well, they will call Washington and inquire. So what happened was they would take the gray seal papers, send a copy to the Library of Congress, and some of y'all know this story, and get a copy of the application that CMA filed with the Library of Congress for the Zodiac Clock of Destiny, the ID card, and another document, the Zodiac Constitution. I, believing that I had some rights because I had these documents in my possession, and that only people who were Moors and had these documents could get a copy of that front page. And I was wrong. So I went to Washington. Now, see, you have to test things. You can't just, you have to test. I went to Washington, to the Library of Congress. I met with the Undersecretary of the Library of Congress. Can't remember his name. He gave us a tour. It's huge. Several buildings. Went down there, did that. So then we're there to get some documents filed with the Library of Congress. So we asked, well, what's the effect of doing this? What does this get us? Because we thought, we were told, that this takes us out of the state's jurisdiction. Okay? So I wanted to know, how does that take us out of the state's jurisdiction? And so the lady said, well, I don't know how that. I said, well, don't we have to have these papers in order to get this? She said, no. She said, anybody can get a copy of this. I said, well, does this entitle us to having a copy of the document? They said, we don't have the document. We don't have the Clock of Destiny. It's an unpublished work. I said, well, why should anybody want to have a copy of the front page of his copyright application? Because that's all you get. 3 copyright applications where he supposedly filled it out, sent it into the Library of Congress as an unpublished work. And she said, well, I don't know. This was the Man's secretary and the people. So I was really confused. Then she showed us a box, a bin, full of envelopes. Envelopes full of front pages of his copyright application from people from so-called Moors all over the country. They got sent back because they didn't have a zip code on. And so then she said, well, they'll just stay here until these people have paid for it, and they'll just stay here until these people call us up and give us a correct zip code. So, wait, this whole thing just was an illusion. So anybody could get the document. What was the purpose of the Zodiac Constitution? I know not what. Because I tested the darn thing in court. I went to court with that damn thing. I lied to you not. I went to federal court right across the street here and said, I'm under this Zodiac Constitution. I'm not under the United States Constitution. And these other courts, state courts, don't have jurisdiction over me. Well, and see, I've been through some humiliating experiences, and I have these classes, so I try to shield y'all from that stuff, right? That judge wrote me a 12-page decision on this Zodiac Constitution that it was not valid at law, blah, 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 and so forth and so on. And then I was told, oh, he's wrong, oh, he doesn't have the jurisdiction, oh, he can't say, writ of mandamus, file a writ of mandamus against the judge, and this, that, and the other. I have been through some circles, I'm telling you. Come to find out, the judge was right, that the Zodiac Constitution is not, it's just a published work. It's a published document that's on file that has the copyright on file with the Library of Congress. Other than that, it's nothing. That if you were to write a poem and send it to the copyright office to have a copyright and don't send in the poem, say you're not going to publish it. Do you understand? That Zodiac Clock of Destiny, that Zodiac, that identification document, that so when and they showed me. You understand? So when I came back, I was, well, where is our stuff registered? Where are we relative to the United States? I wanted to know because I was really ready. I wanted out. I don't want anything else to do with it. There's just too many lies. I've been locked up twice. Once arguing with the judge, got locked up for contempt because I'm in there arguing my status, and didn't even happen. In fact, I was in there arguing with the judge and got cited for contempt, and I wasn't even the one in court. I was in court helping Yari over a traffic ticket, and I got locked up. I'm gonna tell you, and I got locked up because I was trying to fight a cause that was not proper at law, and I didn't know. And these people who pushed and were telling me all these things, they were lying to me and had never tested that stuff in court. All those wars down in Baltimore, Cleveland, Detroit, New York, all that stuff, they got tapes from lectures, Mother and Sons, Round Table, you name them. None of them have been in court. None of them have challenged any of that, excuse my language, bullshit in federal court. And see, I was innocent. I was like, okay, this sounds good. Let's do this. Let's challenge it. You get up in there and get embedded. And the judge, he was looking at this stuff. And at first, I felt pretty confident because I was believing that the judges were against me. But it was those very federal judges. So in hindsight, actually, I see that there were things that I could have done differently, even given what I knew at the time. But it was those federal judges that taught me almost everything I know that I teach in these classes about law. It wasn't any of those Moors. Because they don't know this stuff. So when they talk about somebody calling from Washington to check to see if you're a Moor, they're lying. Yes, Charlotte.
Remember earlier you were saying about the land, how the corporations want you to go through your representatives and things like that. So in the case of what Eugenius just asked about, why would these different federal agencies have to speak to those people? If they know that they're under that incorporation, Moore Science Temple Incorporated, or any other Moorish American type of organization, then they know that they stay wards and they're not sovereign.
And they don't call them either.
It's the same difference as being represented by a state representative.
Yeah, and they don't call those Moorish Science Temple people either. They still pay taxes. Right. And all those Moors about to come, oh, we're not supposed to pay taxes. All of them were paying taxes. All of them were paying taxes. I was the first one to stop paying taxes and put the thing on the record that I wasn't paying taxes. I wasn't paying a water bill. I wasn't paying an electric bill, no cable. I had all that stuff. I wasn't paying a dime. So when they talk all that big talk, it's garbage. It's garbage. And then you say, well, why can't all the Moors come together and we love one another and work together? Because they are corrupt. I mean, we have met, what? Some of y'all know firsthand, the corruption is out there. It is unreal. Haven't you seen it?
Yeah.
Haven't y'all seen the corrupt things they do? You know.
It's just, you know what I'm saying, and this may even sound naive, but, I mean, in terms of, I'm not saying here, but in terms of, then that means it was infiltrated, and then maybe even some of those big wigs are agents, right?
They are agents, and we have been infiltrated. And I know who they are. I know who they are. But it doesn't matter, because they can't be here and stand in this light. Because you know what? And they say, well, maybe your house is bugged. Fine. Maybe your phone is bugged. Fine. Maybe they say, I tell them, come to class, please. Because you know what? Anything I say at home, I'm telling it to your face. I don't have any skeletons in the closet, and if I did, if you threaten to blackmail me, I'm going to tell it. I'm going to tell it first. You threaten to blackmail me? Okay, I'm going to tell everybody what I did. So, now it's out. Now what you got?
But you said, Queen, you can't stop me because I done seen it and I done told you.
No, I'll tell. You see, there are no secrets have made it harder for us to establish the relations, because all those Albions are not against us, and we need to work with them because some of them have been put in place by our ancestors as the gatekeepers when we come along to transition this power back to us and to guide us and help us. And those agents are seeking to destroy that relationship. We won't let them. They can't destroy what Zodiacus has put in place. Can't do it. No matter what they do, they can't destroy this. We are going to rule again from this group right here that came out of this little back room in this building. We shall do it.
So motive may be.
So motivate, rule. And there are those out there who try to stop us with their undercurrents and things like that. They can't even come face to face with us and say, we challenge what you were doing. When we see them in the street, any of these infiltrators, if ran across one today, I won't say who he was, I won't put my head down for anybody. No. But when you're wrong, you put your head down when the light shows up. You go to the corner, right? You want to hide, like a roach, you run from the light. Right? You might get squashed. And that's what they do. Do they know we are here 3 days a week? Every week we are here. Do they ever come and say they want to challenge what we teach, that what we're doing is wrong or anything like that? No. They don't challenge any of that stuff. They're constantly trying to send people in here to spy to take what we do. Right? Aren't they constantly trying to do that? You have to stop. They have to stop them at the door out there sometimes. Have to tell them stop bringing recording devices in here.
Right.
We've had a lot of that. Why are they constantly trying to record and find out what we do if what they have is true and superior? Do your own thing. Don't take what. Charlie, do you have that flyer? Have y'all seen that flyer? You showed it to me. That little yellow flyer where they took the whole first series of our classes and they call themselves trying to have classes. Why not come up with your own classes? Oh yes, they're charging $13. They fell apart because they said they couldn't pay the light bill.
It was 26 classes, and out of 26, only one of them was there. All the rest of them.
They took all of our classes that we created, all of our material, and word for word, right off our syllabus, and said, oh, the science is for everybody. So they tried to teach what they didn't even put together. They fell apart. But the reason they couldn't pay the electric bill is because they couldn't answer the people's questions, because it wasn't their research. So they didn't know how to follow through.
But how a lot of people in here go astray is because a lot of these people who have once been here, they look good on the outside, and they talk with a subtle voice, and it's attractive. People, oh, you know, this happened to me, and guess what Queen did, or guess what this person did. And next thing you know, you suck it.
Yeah.
You suck it. And on the surface, they have a thing that law called ex parte, meaning one side. On the surface, it sounds like it's prima facie. On one side, if you hear all the evidence, it sounds authentic. They got papers, they got other people saying, yeah, she did it, I was a witness. But when you examine it to the full extent, you say, wait a minute, all of y'all knew better, if you can examine it. But if you come to class half the time, you ain't going to get all the intelligence you need to say, all of you were wrong. You're not going to get it. So you go astray. You go with those.
They don't even have the courage to come and face us and say, I feel like this. If you smack me upside the head, right? And I know you smacked me upside the head and I can go tell, let's say, we're children, I'm going to go tell your mama. I'm going to go tell your mama that you slapped me upside the head, right? And I don't care if you're there or not, I'm going to tell on you, right? They don't even have the courage to come and say, you slapped me upside the head, right? And this is what you did. They all out there telling all their friends that they got slapped upside the head, but they won't come and confront and say, you slapped me upside the head. Because nothing happened, nothing was done to them. They just wanted to steal.
I met with some people, and they said, I thought they said, well, what papers are any good if you went to the county to record the papers, you can't get recorded. I said, well, you know what? I just happen to have mine right here. trying to record that at the county. There was no letter. What are you talking about?
The stuff is raggedy.
I mean,
All that stuff out there is raggedy. But you see, here's the thing. The things that we do out there and try to do outside of a governmental structure, it is not going to work. You may get a little distance with it, but ultimately it's going to fall apart unless it has the power of a group of people who are elected to provide, to be responsible to the people in their government. I was in a debate just last week with someone who says, well, I'm disappointed. My tax documents that you promised and you don't keep your promises, and so I don't want to belong to an organization where people don't keep their promise. So then I said, well, I didn't keep my promise to you, and I'm explaining to you the reasons why the things that you want to happen cannot happen. But you want, okay, and the individual is a tax issue. So then, so then the issue said, then the person said, well, you didn't make me tax exempt. I said, oh, really? I recall we did it at the same time. Now, I said, where's your 13%? And I would say the same thing as they were here tonight. Well, this very government that you don't want to pay 13% to, you want us to stand for you so the corporation won't attack you. Where's your 13%? Well, if you help me, I'll give you 13%. I said, oh, no. We won't do that. You give your 13%, and then we'll put you in line to get help. But unless you contribute your 13%, don't ask this government to come and stand up for you. So, what paper? Next week. They're coming next week. We're solving all that problem. Because we have to have everybody out by April 15th. We have all our people out of that system by April 15th. So, and it's going to, for some people, depending on who they work for, it's going to take a little longer than others. Okay? But by April 15th, everybody who's Gray Seal is going to be out of that tax system. Out. Past, present, future. Out. So, but for the people who said, well, you didn't make me tax exempt, well, fine. Because I tell you what, all those mores, because there are people out there who are tax exempt, who don't participate with us, but guess what? When our stuff goes out to the proper authorities, that this is the group, this is the list who's tax exempt, they're going to come after you with a vengeance, all those other people. If they not, and we're going to tell them to do it. I'm going to tell them to do it because you're not going to stand in my face and say, I didn't make you tax exempt, so I'm not going to give anything to this government, but every time I want help with something, a court case, anything that happens with me, I'm going to come running for some help. Don't do it. You got to be here, you got to work, you got to participate. So, and as far as the land issue and all that stuff is concerned, Gray Seal has the capacity to protect people in those tax issues, in those land issues, but we will set a criteria. Right now, I don't know what that is, as to who qualifies for TIBLIS. We're going to do that, so you will hear little bits and pieces I can't control. There's some people who have them, and I want to tell you that because I don't want to be angry with somebody because you heard that so-and-so has a TIBLIS. There are people who have them, okay? And there will be others who will have them. Don't get mad, don't get jealous, just wait your time. Don't come ask me, when is mine coming up? Because I don't know. Quite frankly, and all I can say is, we're working on it. Those people who are sincere, who work with us, who just, be patient, don't run out there, do all those crazy things, because as soon as you do that, that's going to hold up your process right there. So don't do that. And if you finally say, well, I don't care, so be it. So be it. That's all I can say. And I thank everybody for coming out tonight. I enjoyed you, and hope to see you next